Good evening, Facebook. This is Sam and Larry's here with the Father's Ministry. We're coming to you live from Larry's house. I'm here filling in for Jolia, who couldn't make it this evening. Where do I start? Well, I'm the first staff here to join Father's Ministry. There's also a board who works with us and all that stuff, but I work closely with Larry. Him and I have been working together for off and on for 4 years, and now I'm with him full time under the Father's Ministry. And I just kind of wanted to give you that little background of who I am and my connection to this man here. So, Larry, my question to you is, what is the topic for today's video?
The topic for today's video is, why do I do what I do?
Why we do what we do. Well, guys, that's a really intense topic, because I myself, walking with Larry, had to ask myself that question. And that's a question that sometimes is hard to answer. Because I found in walking with Larry, I came up here in February, that in my life, sometimes I had to walk out issues. Number one, having an overreaction to difficulties or problems or challenges that come up in life. And the question is, why is that? Why do we have overreactions? And walking with the Father's Ministry since February and walking with Larry, I've been able to see a change in those overreactions towards things. Sometimes life throws curveballs and we sometimes blow up. Some of us have a overreaction the other direction and we implode, or what do you call it? When you implode, yeah. You come, everything falls inside instead of blowing up. You go in and seclude yourself and all that stuff. But the question is why? And today it's very interesting. Larry has some insight on the reason why we do what we do. And to be honest, that's a challenging question. And when Larry challenged me with that question, why do you do what you do? He asked me, Sam, why do you do that? Why do you react that way? And then you get to the root cause of the issues of why. Because sometimes it's simple things, guys. And then you blow up. And, you know, like, say, for instance, like my dad called me about me trying to sell a truck back home. And the price was messed up. So I blew up. I got angry, was hollering stuff. That's a deep issue far beyond just the price of a truck. And then I had to ask, why did I do that? And Larry today is going to explain how to get to the root of some of these issues with your own personal life and beyond. So, Larry, hand it over to you. Give us some insight.
Very good. Well, I'll just pick up from where Sam led off. When Sam started to work with me, I noticed he did react a lot. Not just once in a while, a lot. Yeah. And I remember when I talked to him about it, I said, Sam, why do you react so much? Why when something asks or somebody does this, you're ready to pound them, you want to slap them around and every other thing. And he would get almost angry with me. He says, I don't know why. I've always been like this. And I think that's a key question too. That's a key answer. When you start telling yourself, I've always been like this, there's something deep inside. When I teach this subject, one of the beginning of the class, I begin to ask the students, why do you do what you do? Why is it hard for you to stop lying? Why is it hard for you to explode? Why is it hard for you to be open with somebody? Why is it hard in your relationships? Talk to a lot of people, boy-girl relationships, they never last. The guy cheats, goes on, everything goes on. And there's always these continual problems that keep coming up. There's a little bit of a victory, but then they hit the deck. Yeah. Sam was like that. He would walk with the Lord, very good for a while. All of a sudden, he'd blow up.
That's right.
And then he was doing good, then he'd blow up. So the question I start with now is, why do we do what we do? We've been talking about Fatherless America, and this is our third video. And I gave you a lot of statistics, how the fatherless has grown. We're at about a quarter now. 1 in 4 kids, or sometimes they say 1 in 3, are fatherless or don't have a father with them before they're 18. 18 and under, I say. So it's there, fatherlessness. And it's steady, it's not growing too much. Yeah. But 1 in 4, 1 in 3, that's a lot of kids. And we talked about that It's not just a father not being there, it's a father not being involved with the children as well. If a guy comes home or a mom, he sits on the couch and just watches TV but never says anything or even plays video games, in many ways he's an absent father. So this is, again, not to condemn anybody, but we want to find out. Because what I did, I started to ask myself this question. Why do I do what I do? And I began to examine it. And I want to share some of that with you. The question you also got to ask yourself is, how do you see yourself? What image do you have of yourself? Just for our time together, image or self-image is how you see yourself. Our identity, we'll say, is how God sees us. Then it's just, there might be different interpretation, but for us, we'll keep it like that. How do you see yourself? Sometimes when we're growing up, words were spoken over us, lack of encouragement in our lives, and we begin to question who we are. We begin to question my value system. For example, you go to high school, and you might have had an older brother who was really, really good in sports. And because of that, he had a name for himself. You come in there, and you're just not that way. You're not built like it. You're smaller or something like that, or just not have a desire to play any sport. But you notice that your older brother, everybody wants to be around him. Everybody likes him. So you started to think to yourself as you compare, if I was like my brother, I would be accepted more. I would want, people would come up to me and act like I'm important. But the problem is, you probably, if he's a basketball player, you're probably never going to grow as tall as him, and all these other things that hinder actually you being physically the same as your brother. So maybe you get into lifting weights. And you get very good at it. You get very strong, but the fact of the matter, your brother sees that, and he starts lifting weights, and before you know it, no matter what you do, you're never going to be that, because you keep comparing yourself. Or you can be on the other end. You're tired of this. You're tired of people comparing you with somebody else, so you bail. You quit. And a lot of times you end up watching video games, playing video games, etc. And because of that, and the sedentary lifestyle you have, you begin to put on a lot of weight. And your friends are on the internet. Some you see, some you never see. You don't forget how to relate properly, and the list goes on and on. So what we're going to ask today, and tie it into the father, is why are we in a boy crisis? Why are we in a fatherless relation? Why are we in a fatherless generation? What is going on? And I recently read a book by a guy named, I'll show you the book so you know. This is the book by a guy named Warren Farrell and John Gray. They have PhD, and they've been studying this crisis for many years. And he wrote some stuff right at the beginning of the book. He said in the book, I'll read it so I don't forget it, exactly what it's.
Quote, Boy Crisis.
It's on the book, The Boy Crisis. Being male is now the single largest demographic factor for the early death. And that was written by a guy named Randolph Neese, director of the Center for Evolution and Medicine at Arizona State University. He said, because we are male, or because you're a male, that's the highest demographic that you'll have an early death. I read that and go, why would we as men have an early death? And it goes on to be, right now the statistics are self-harm compared to women is 4-1.
Wow.
Yeah. Every day, 150 workers die from hazardous working conditions. 92% of them are males.
Better watch out.
Males take if you don't have a real formal education, you turn to other jobs. But many times those jobs are really high risk. Like you watch different shows, the Deadliest Catch. Those people are risking their lives to make a lot of money, or mining, or any of these other things. But all that wears on you to the point that you die an early death. And then if you're a coal miner and your lungs or whatever else happens, it affects who you are. Because what you're trying to do is get your value from what you do.
Oh, yeah.
If you do this and you don't really have a purpose, in life as well. Because I've known men who really had a desire to maybe be an artist or get into the arts or something like that, but he got married at an early age, had a child right away, and that was the reason they got married, which is good. But all of a sudden his dreams were put on the shelf because he had to work, which was the responsible thing to do. But the twinkle in the guy's eye went out. And after on and on, all of a sudden he got more and more depressed, wasn't satisfied with anything. So the question is, why do we do what we do? Also, there's a big thing now. We've heard of anorexia, mostly for girls to lose the weight. You know, they starve themselves basically. But on the guy's side, it's even worse now with bigorexia, if you ever heard of that. Bigorexia is if you feel, if I can just be bigger and stronger, I'll be more attractive to the female.
Wow.
So you begin to follow bigorexia. And then as you do that and you get obsessed with your body image, you begin to shoot up, take steroids, etc., etc. And then many times it leads to abuse. There's nothing wrong with lifting weights. There's nothing wrong with being strong. But because you're trying to get your value from it, you see what I'm saying? Basically, it can lead you to abuse. It can lead you to many other things. So you have to be careful about it. And he goes on to explain in his book how it's a greater problem right now than even anorexia with young girls. Because we as men put pressure on women that they have to look a certain way and be a certain type. And they might do the same towards us. So therefore, we have to look different. We got to have this. TV shows different things. Women on TV, guys, they got to look and act a certain way in order to be accepted. And that's the body image we want. And many of us know, if you ever work out or lift, a lot of it's genetics, and you're not going to get as big and strong as the next guy. But it doesn't matter. You're going to push and push and push yourself. And again, it's asking the question, why do I do what I do? Sometimes people, like Sam, when I would ask him to do something or things were coming up in his life, I would say, Sam, why are you getting so angry? Why are you so wound up? It's not a big deal, Sam. We'll figure it out. And he would actually shut down.
He'd get me all jacked up.
That's what he called it. He would shut down, and his mind would drift, and out of his mouth he began to criticize other people.
That's right.
They don't understand me. They don't know this. They don't know that. And why? Because anytime things were too much for Sam or too much information came up for him, he would shut down his mind.
That's right.
So he lived like that, like all of us do. We live in this word. We live in the world with these things that are bothering us, and we've learned to adjust. One of the big things that people struggle with these days is insecurity. Fear of not being accepted. Fear of being abandoned. Fear that you'll be left alone. And that gnaws at us a lot. And sometimes that's what you're motivated by a lot. By just the fact that you're inadequate. You're not good enough. In the book of Numbers, when Israel went into the promised land, they sent these spies out and they brought back all the grapes and everything else. And the land was very fruitful. And they were ready to go in and possess the land. But the people, the 12 spies, 10 of them said, oh, we can't go into the land because there's giants in the land. And they see us as grasshoppers, which tells them to smash them. Now, when I looked at that story, it always bothered me, thinking to myself, why are they so afraid? If you believe the biblical account, God delivered them from Egypt, 10 plagues, crossing the Red Sea, providing for them while they wandered in the desert for 40 days. Later it was 40 years. And yet they still didn't believe. So I said, why didn't they believe? It's because they saw God's power. Because they were small in their own eyes. They were grasshoppers. And how you see yourself affects who you are. If you see yourself as unworthy, if you see yourself as ugly, as stupid, and nobody likes me, that's what you're going to live out. It's like you come into a room and people are looking or they stop talking, you automatically think, oh, they're talking about me. What did I do? And you begin to freak out. And we cover these things. One of the ways we cover them is through anger. When Sam did that, he had pain in his heart.
That's right.
And that's what he used anger to cover. Why? He pushed you away. I don't want to talk about it there. But he had come to work with me, and we had known each other for at least 3 years, and he needed a change. His words, he's from Missouri, he says, I'm all jacked up, Larry.
I was.
You got to do something to straighten me out. Now, I can't straighten anybody out, but Sam was jacked up. And it's because of his anger. He was a smart guy, but he kicked out of school, basically. If you don't do the trade school, you'll kick you out. I mean, so they go, oh, they sent me to a trade school. Yeah, because they were going to kick you out anyway. And that's what he did. He didn't care what anybody did or anybody said. And it had to do with way back when he was being raised by a kid, by a child, when he was raised by his dad. That's what it goes back to. And next week I'm going to tell the story of how Sam's anger was rooted in a father that was wounded. And it came out. So that's all I'm going to share today. Because this is a big subject, and we have time. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sam for a few closing minutes, statements, and then we're done. And you guys have a great day. God bless you.
So, guys, with all that being said, I'm just taking it in too. You know, every time he talks about it, my mind starts cranking to something new. But I'd say, guys, I challenge you all to ask yourself the question why you do what you do. And ask God. I mean, we are Father's ministry, so we can't really talk about this without talking about God. So
Amen.
I'm just asking you, talk and ask God, God, why do I do what I do? And I really will be praying, too, that everyone that watches this, that you get a revelation, you get a fresh idea of why you're doing what you do. And, guys, we hope that you can pray it out. And if you want to contact us, there's a button on Father's Ministry. Send us an email. We'd be happy to lift you up in prayer.
Again, thanks for listening and take care.
God bless y'all. Take care.